Alright guys, what's going on? SmartHelping.com here with another financial model. It's been a couple weeks. It's the last day of the month here in May, but I'm going to get this going here. So it's more for the general purpose of this. If I could say like a couple words of what value you might get out of the spreadsheet is, you can put in your historical data of sales by item and date, so time series data, and then based on that, you can get a weekly forecast on a separate area of what based on what you did last year and how much percentage growth you want to get. And then it will also allow you to have a current year's data input, and then it will compare last year versus this year, but not just last year's raw data, but last year's data with the growth. So it's going to say if you're on pace to meet your goals. And it's more about demand. It has nothing to do with money. It's completely based on quantity demanded. So let's go through it. I kind of just told you about the growth percentage, but we'll get into that in a little bit. We also have our start date of the last year, or this could be whatever year you're taking data from that you want to try to forecast from. It doesn't necessarily have to be last year, but it's just a separate year than the current one. So you put the first date of that year here, then you put the current first date of the current year here, regardless of if if it's not going to be the first day of the year every time. But you just want to get the start of the year. Once you input these things, you will have your data entry. So here's the historical last year's data, or whatever year it might be. So you've basically got three data points: the date, the item ID, if applicable, and the quantity sold or supply used. So this could apply to all kinds of things, and the key is you're just putting the three things. You might not even need an item ID. You might just have the date and the total sold, and a record of that. However your export looks. My goal was to make it as simple as possible so it could fit pretty much any data dump, or you could put the data in manually, however you want to do it, and it's really clear. So after you put in last year's data, you'll get a summary by week and product ID of last year that automatically populates with formulas. So it's going down by week. How much total quantity did you sell in the week, and how much total quantity did you sell per product list, which these are all defined on the validation tab. Also, you're going to see what your yearly total is per product ID at the top. And then based on that, so now you have kind of what you did last year. Then you're going to put in your current year's data, which could be manual or a data dump, but it's the same structure. For data points, the date, the item ID, and the quantity sold, supply used. So this is kind of allowing you to see a forecast of last year, but also show you how you're doing against that forecast. And it's also giving you the timeliness of your quantity demanded for last year. So it's really a nice tool to get a picture of what's going on. Then you've got this year's summary, same as last year's summary, except for it's using your current year's data. So I just put in a couple weeks here. Now we come to the forecast, which this forecast is now using this control percent of 5% and applying it to all of last year's data by week and by product ID. So in your forecast here, you can see last year we did 39 in week 1 for the total week, and then those on the individual products. And then this year, or I mean on the forecast, you're planning on doing 41. You can see if I change this to say 100%, and it would double it. And you can see that here, 78. Whereas it was 39. So that applies to everything. And then this also is your forecasted per product ID. So it's saying, last year in week 1 for product A you did 2. and then the forecast is going to be 4, and it basically is going to double all these since we just set this at 100%. So you can see this should be 4, 4, 2, 8, 10, 44. You can see 4, 4, 2, 8, 10, 44, 6, right across the top, all auto-populated. And then we have a column here for the current year, just to see, this is just a general summary to show how much you've done for the current year for each week across all project IDs against the forecast. That's not where the bread and butter is, though. Where you're going to get insight is on the variance, which I've actually done. So you can see the total weekly variance, and then the variance of A, B, C, D, and E, F, and G all independently. And obviously the control is super high. If we put this, let's say we thought, we're forecasting down 5% relative to last year. So we think demand's going down. So what does our forecast look like on a weekly basis based on that? Well, here's the numbers that I just showed you. They've changed. And then the variance is, well, now look at, we've got some green here because our current year, whatever date I put in there, which I put in right here, is higher than what that forecasted figure is. So we've got that general structure, and that's, I mean, this can really be modified. We could have 100 products if you wanted variances on 100 or 1,000. It would still work the same exact way, just more. And the structure of this is going to be defined as comparing one 52-week period to another 52-week period. That's pretty much all you're doing. And forecasting out, obviously, on the historical one. The second part here is the visual, which what I've done is just we got a little bit on last year's data. I got a little bit big there. Let's make these increments a little bit smaller. Well, that's you could say is really up and down, but is growing in volatility against the current year, which is this little one. But you can see the current year is that color, forecast from last year is that. So this is going to show you on a total quantity sold across all products per week where you're at currently and what you're forecasted to do based on your assumptions in this 5% and then what you did in that last year's data. Now hold on a second, because this is supposed to sum. This is where I need to change it. So let's see here. Now it should be a little bit smaller so you could see the differences. Format this. Let's go restart it here. 10, 11. Now what do we got? Oh man, it still gets up there to 1900, but you can see a little bit better down here. Let's really, what I could do is just show the first couple weeks. Let's just clear the rest of this out of here. Now on the visual it's a bit clearer, so you can see what the current year is doing, what is forecasted in the blue, and the difference. Obviously you want to be doing better than your forecast, so you'd want this colored, which I'm colorblind, but this lighter color to be bigger than the darker one. What do I got formatted that's not showing the right number? I want these to be a number with let's see here. Oh, because it's general. I want number, no decimal places. Okay, so now if I get up into the thousands, perfect. Also, let's see, what can we get for a design? Kind of like this one. With some background there. Okay, so that's kind of the flow of it. I think you could apply this to nearly any business that sells stuff, and it could be useful. It's almost like a budget versus actual, but it's really doing it for quantity of items sold. One last thing I did is you could see here it's a query, so you can actually pick the week, pick the item ID, and then you could pick if you're doing the current or the forecast, and it's going to show you for that week and that product what the amount was and what the total weekly was for that week. Now I don't have data down there, but if I put in some data here, let's just start this again. You can see there it's already populated. So if I go to the forecast, if I change it to A, that changed. B, C, D. So it's basically, this is saying, okay, week 4 of the forecast in D is looking like 29.5, and that's pulling the forecasted figure after growth. It's not doing the historical hard data point. So we go forecast, let's just check it. So let's see, week 4, item D. We go to week 4, item D is 29.5, and that's it. And this is obviously not rounding. The other one is. So if we pull this out, you can see 29.5 is the figure that would show up. If we go to C, it should say 17, and then B should be 44 for that week. Let's see. So C is 17.1, yep. B is 43.7, yep, that would have been 44 on the round. Okay, so that works. And this is just a nice snapshot. Pick your week, pick your product, and do if you're doing the forecast or the current, and then you could see it's basically just zoning in on whatever figures in this area. With a lookup, and all this stuff's all automated. Let's go back to week 1. We have some current data in there. So you can also report on your current year. You could do what you're forecasted. And then just to see your comparison of forecasted versus current, we got a percentage and we got a visual. Alright. That's all I got for you. This model, it's going to be a mid-level model, so that means the cost to you is only going to be a one-time fee of $45. And if you want me to build this specifically for your business, my charge is $40 an hour. I work pretty quickly. Just to make this whole entire spreadsheet from scratch, it only took me about like an hour and a half. And this was literally from scratch. So you know, you can kind of gauge that based on how much work you need and figure out how many hours, you know, it might take me. And then if you want to hire me, obviously go to smarthelping.com. The link will be in the description box below, and that's where you can interact with me and try to get some work done. Alright, that's all I got for you today. Demand modeling based on last year's figures and a percentage change. And obviously, oh, one last thing, you can do flat. If you just want to see what last year's numbers were without a forecast, you just hit 0. And then you could see the forecasted figures are basically the same as last year. As you can see here, these are the actual last year figures. Forecast figures exactly the same. Alright, put this back up to 5%. And then when you get the sheet, obviously I've put some instructions here, but you can clear out all the old data, all the dates, item IDs, all this stuff. Put in your own historical data and also current year's data. So you want to clear all these out. But I've kept them there so you can kind of look how and see how it flows with the logic, and it kind of helps get you jump started into actually using this. Alright, I've been through every tab. I'll see you guys later, and hopefully this helps a lot of businesses better forecast demand.